There's a photograph that hung on the wall of Meir Dagan's office during his 9 years as director of Mossad. It's not what you'd expect in the office of Israel's spy master. It's not a picture of Israeli leaders or famous intelligence victories. It's a black and white photograph from 1944. It shows an elderly Jewish man in Poland, forced to his knees by Nazi soldiers, moments before his execution. That man was Meir Dagan's grandfather. And beneath that photograph, every single day for 9 years, Dagan planned operations that would make him the most feared intelligence chief in the world. Operations that assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists on the streets of Tehran. Operations that destroyed nuclear facilities with computer viruses. Operations that killed terrorists across multiple continents. Operations that took covert warfare to a level of sophistication and ruthlessness the world had never seen. When Meir Dagan became director of Mossad in 2002, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon told him his mission with brutal simplicity: stop Iran's nuclear program by any means necessary. For the next 9 years, Dagan waged a shadow war inside Iran that combined cutting-edge technology with old-fashioned assassination. He turned Mossad into a precision instrument of strategic covert action. And he proved something that intelligence services worldwide still study today: that a small, determined intelligence organization can achieve what armies cannot. This is the story of Meir Dagan, the Mossad chief who believed that killing one man could prevent killing thousands. The spy master who took Israel's war with Iran out of the public eye and into the shadows. And the intelligence mastermind who demonstrated that in the 21st century, the most powerful weapon isn't always a bomb. Sometimes it's anonymity, precision, and the willingness to do what others consider unthinkable. To understand what made Meir Dagan such an effective and controversial intelligence chief, you need to understand where he came from. Because Dagan wasn't a career intelligence officer who rose through bureaucratic ranks. He was a soldier, a special operations commander, a man who had spent his entire life in direct action, not intelligence analysis. Born in 1945 in the Soviet Union to Polish Jewish parents who had survived the Holocaust, Dagan immigrated to Israel as a child. He grew up in a nation that was literally fighting for survival, surrounded by enemies, outnumbered, with no margin for error. That reality shaped everything about how he saw the world. Dagan joined the Israeli Defense Forces and quickly gravitated towards special operations. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, he commanded a specialized unit operating behind Egyptian lines. His methods were unconventional, aggressive, and brutally effective. He led operations dressed in Arab clothing, conducting raids deep in enemy territory. His unit became legendary for its daring and its casualties inflicted on enemy forces. But Dagan also developed a reputation for ruthlessness that made even Israeli military leadership uncomfortable. There were allegations of excessive force, of operations that crossed lines even in the context of war. Ariel Sharon, who was Dagan's commander during some of these operations, recognized something in him. A willingness to do what was necessary without hesitation, without moral paralysis, without the bureaucratic caution that often paralyzes decision-making. After his military career, Dagan worked in various government and security roles. But he was always the operator, the action officer, the man who believed problems were solved through decisive action, not endless discussion. In 2002, when Ariel Sharon became prime minister, he faced what he considered Israel's greatest existential threat since its founding: Iran's nuclear program. Tehran was building the infrastructure to enrich uranium. They were developing ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel. And Iranian leaders were openly calling for Israel's destruction. Military strikes were too risky. They might not destroy all of Iran's facilities, and they would trigger regional war. Diplomacy was moving too slowly. Economic sanctions, while damaging, weren't stopping the program. Sharon needed another option. A third way. Something between diplomacy and war. He needed Meir Dagan. Sharon appointed Dagan as director of Mossad with explicit instructions to delay Iran's nuclear program by any means necessary. Give diplomacy and sanctions time to work. And if they don't work, ensure that when military action becomes necessary, the target list is as small as possible because you've already destroyed the most critical elements covertly. Dagan accepted the position, understanding exactly what Sharon was asking him to do. This wasn't traditional intelligence collection. This was covert warfare. And Dagan was about to transform Mossad into the most lethal intelligence service on the planet. When Dagan took control of Mossad in 2002, he inherited an organization that was already one of the world's most capable intelligence services. But it was also an organization that had become somewhat cautious, bureaucratic, risk-averse after some high-profile failures in the 1990s. Dagan immediately began reshaping the organization. He wanted operators, not analysts in positions of authority. He wanted people willing to take risks, to act aggressively, to think creatively about how to hurt Iran's nuclear program in ways that couldn't be traced definitively back to Israel. He restructured Mossad's operational divisions, giving more resources and authority to units focused on covert action rather than just intelligence collection. He brought in people from military special operations backgrounds. He emphasized technical innovation, using the latest technology for surveillance, sabotage, and assassination. Most critically, Dagan developed a strategic approach to attacking Iran's nuclear program that was both sophisticated and ruthless. He identified multiple pressure points where covert operations could slow or damage the program, and then he systematically began attacking each one. The strategy had several components working simultaneously. First, physical sabotage of nuclear facilities and equipment. This meant identifying critical components in Iran's nuclear infrastructure and finding ways to destroy or damage them through covert means. Sometimes that meant sabotage during manufacturing or transport before equipment even reached Iran. Sometimes it meant operations inside Iran itself. Second, assassination of key scientists and engineers whose expertise was essential to the program. Iran had perhaps a few dozen people with the specialized knowledge necessary to design nuclear weapons and the delivery systems for them. Dagan concluded that killing these individuals would set the program back years because their knowledge couldn't be easily replaced. Third, cyber warfare and technical sabotage using computer viruses and electronic attacks to damage systems and create distrust in Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Fourth, intelligence operations that identified Iranian nuclear procurement networks around the world and worked with foreign governments to interdict shipments, arrest suppliers, and disrupt the supply chain. Fifth, psychological warfare that created paranoia within Iran's nuclear establishment, making scientists afraid to participate, making security services suspect everyone of being an Israeli spy, degrading morale and efficiency through fear. All five components work together to create what intelligence professionals call a strategic covert action campaign, not just individual operations, but a coordinated multi-year effort designed to achieve specific strategic objectives. And the results were devastating. The first major operation that showed Dagan's new approach occurred in 2007, though the world didn't learn about it until years later. Israeli intelligence discovered that Syria was building a nuclear reactor in the desert with North Korean assistance. This wasn't Iran, but it was Iran's ally, and it represented nuclear proliferation that threatened Israel. On September 6, 2007, Israeli F-15 fighter jets destroyed the facility in a bombing raid called Operation Orchard. But what made this operation remarkable was the intelligence preparation. Mossad operatives had penetrated the site, collected soil samples, photographed the interior, and gathered conclusive evidence that the facility was nuclear. The operation demonstrated the quality of intelligence Dagan's Mossad could develop, and the willingness of Israeli leadership to act on it. But Syria was just the opening act. The main event was Iran. Starting in 2007, Iranian nuclear scientists began dying under mysterious circumstances. On January 12, 2010, Dr. Masoud Ali Mohammadi, a particle physicist involved in Iran's nuclear program, was killed when a motorcycle rigged with explosives detonated as he left his home in Tehran. The bomb was remotely triggered as he approached his car. He died instantly. On November 29, 2010, two Iranian nuclear scientists were attacked simultaneously in morning rush-hour traffic in Tehran. Dr. Majid Shahriari was killed when a magnetic bomb attached to his car detonated. Dr. Faridun Abbasi survived a similar attack on his vehicle, though he was seriously injured. On July 23, 2011, Dr. Dariush Rezanjad, who worked on detonation systems, was shot dead by two motorcyclists outside his daughter's kindergarten in Tehran. On January 11, 2012, Dr. Mostafa Ahmadi Roshan, a deputy director at the Natanz uranium enrichment facility, was killed when a magnetic bomb attached to his car exploded in Tehran traffic. Again, motorcyclists placed the device and escaped. The pattern was clear. Iran's most valuable nuclear scientists were being systematically assassinated, often in broad daylight, in the heart of Tehran, despite massive security efforts to protect them. Iran accused Israel and Mossad specifically. Israel never officially confirmed or denied responsibility. But intelligence sources, former Israeli officials, and investigative journalists have all pointed to these operations as Meir Dagan's handiwork. The tradecraft was sophisticated. Magnetic bombs that could be attached to vehicles in seconds by motorcyclists moving through traffic. Remote detonation time for maximum effect. Surveillance networks that track targets' daily routines. Local assets who provided intelligence on routes, schedules, and security. And operational security so tight that despite Iran's massive counterintelligence efforts, the operations continued for years. Each assassination sent multiple messages. To Iranian scientists, working on the nuclear program could get you killed. To Iranian security services, you cannot protect these people even in your own capital. To the international community, Israel was willing to take extraordinary risks to prevent Iranian nuclear weapons. And to Iran's leadership, your program is penetrated, your people are vulnerable, and we can reach you anywhere. But assassination wasn't Dagan's only weapon. In fact, his most sophisticated operation didn't kill anyone directly. It destroyed machines. In 2010, cybersecurity researchers discovered a computer virus unlike anything they'd ever seen. It was extraordinarily complex, clearly created by a nation-state with enormous resources, and it had a very specific target: Siemens industrial control systems of the type used in Iran's uranium enrichment facilities. The virus was called Stuxnet. Stuxnet was a weapon. A digital weapon designed to physically destroy centrifuges enriching uranium at Iran's Natanz facility. It worked by subtly altering the speed at which centrifuges spun, causing them to tear themselves apart mechanically while reporting to operators that everything was functioning normally. It was sabotage at a level of sophistication that required deep knowledge of Iran's specific systems, access to introduce the virus into air-gapped networks not connected to the internet, and programming expertise that only a handful of organizations in the world possessed. Multiple investigations concluded that Stuxnet was jointly developed by Israeli and American intelligence. And within Israel, the operational lead was Meir Dagan's Mossad, working in coordination with Unit 8200, Israel's Signals Intelligence Agency. Stuxnet destroyed approximately 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz. But more importantly, it created doubt. Iranian engineers no longer trusted their own systems. They had to assume anything could be compromised. The psychological impact was as significant as the physical damage. This was 21st century warfare. Not soldiers and tanks, but code and computer viruses achieving what airstrikes might not accomplish. Physical destruction of enemy capabilities without anyone dying, without missiles crossing borders, without triggering conventional war. And it bore all the hallmarks of Meir Dagan's approach: creative, technically sophisticated, strategically focused on specific objectives, and executed with a level of boldness that seemed almost reckless, but was actually meticulously calculated. The combined effect of assassinations, sabotage, Stuxnet, and other operations that remain classified achieved something remarkable. Iran's nuclear program, which intelligence assessments in the early 2000s suggested might produce a weapon within a few years, was significantly delayed. Scientists became afraid to work on the program. Equipment kept mysteriously failing. Supply chains were interdicted. The program lurched from crisis to crisis, making slower progress than Iran's leadership had planned. Western intelligence agencies assessed that the covert campaign bought several years of time. Time for economic sanctions to bite. Time for diplomatic pressure to build. Time for internal Iranian political dynamics to change. Did Meir Dagan's operation stop Iran's nuclear program permanently? No. Iran continued working toward nuclear capability. But the operations achieved their strategic purpose: delay, disruption, and degradation of capabilities, giving other policy tools time to work. But Dagan's approach also raised profound questions that the intelligence community still debates. Is assassination of civilian scientists legitimate in covert warfare? Iranian nuclear scientists weren't soldiers. They were physicists, engineers, academics. Some had families. They were killed not in combat, but in targeted operations. Does preventing nuclear proliferation justify killing people who aren't directly threatening you with violence? Dagan would have answered yes without hesitation. He believed, genuinely believed, that preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons would prevent a future war that might kill millions. In his moral calculus, killing a dozen scientists to prevent nuclear holocaust was not just justified, it was a moral obligation. But that utilitarian logic makes many people uncomfortable, even those who agree Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. There's also the question of sovereignty. Conducting assassinations in foreign countries violates every norm of international law. It risks escalation. It sets precedents that other countries might follow. If Israel can assassinate Iranian scientists, can Iran assassinate Israeli scientists? Can Russia assassinate Ukrainian officials? Can China assassinate American engineers? Where does it end? Dagan would argue that Israel faces unique existential threats that justify unique responses. But critics see a dangerous precedent being set. Then, there's the effectiveness question. Did these operations actually achieve strategic objectives? Or did they simply provoke Iran to dig in, harden its facilities, expand the program, and become more determined to obtain nuclear weapons as the ultimate deterrent against Israel? Assessments differ. Some argue the operations were strategically successful in buying time. Others argue they were tactically impressive but strategically counterproductive because they increased Iranian determination. What's undeniable is that Meir Dagan transformed Mossad during his tenure from 2002 to 2011. He made it more operational, more aggressive, more willing to take risks.